My friend Sheila Gunn-Reid is at the microphone there, and I'd like to invite folks to come up and put a question.
Actually, I'll bring the microphone to them.
Okay,
I think
perfect.
that's better.
Okay.
And I will control the microphone. Friends, don't make me croak at you. No stories, just questions, so that everybody gets an opportunity and so that our panelists can give you a fulsome response.
Thank you. Very glad to be here. This is the first town hall I've attended of anything. Wow. Hard to direct this as a question. Out here, I see that there are a number of First Nations people. The old chiefs, 20 years older than me, they say, don't call us First Nations, we're Indians. So my Indian buddies say, call us Indians, and thank you for letting us know about you. Hey, hey. How many people are military? How many people are military? If you can, stand up. If you can't, just put your hand up. So, in terms of our military, these are the guys that are boots on the ground. We can all be here because of them. All of us. The lights are on. They can speak. I'm up here. We're here because of our military and our veterans. So when I talk about the question, my question is, how are we going to augment or properly recognize our warriors when they come back?
From where?
It's not a physical war.
Yeah, I don't think this is a... Go ahead, Nadine.
This is not a physical war. We can win this democratically.
Yeah.
And I just explained to you guys how we do it.
Yeah.
We live in a democratic country, and how we honor our veterans. I'm a former veteran RCMP. I served in the reserve military too. Some people don't know that. How we honor them is we take advantage of the democratic rights we have in this country, and we protect the freedom that they fought for.
Thank you.
That's how we honor them.
Thanks, Nadine. I'm going to ask a quick question. This one is for Corey. Corey, we hear all the time about the treaties. And what do we do about the treaties? And do First Nations people have a veto in this process?
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion on that. Some chiefs in Alberta were speaking up. No, they don't have a veto. But that said, they're very important citizens in each province. People are blurring the term between consent and consultation. And we must consult, we must speak. They're citizens like everybody else. And if anybody's having a terrible time in the Canadian system, get out in the reserve and have a look around. The only ones who are happy with the reserve seem to be the chiefs. But either way, there's not a veto, but I think we certainly have an obligation to try and involve our Indigenous citizens as much as everybody else and get them voting for or against, but participating in the process. But as Ezra was saying too, they're going to throw everything at us. One of the chiefs who was speaking out was already notorious for taking payments to say things. That's one of the myths that's going to be spread, is that this is impossible because the Indigenous people have a veto. No, they don't. Does a referendum violate the treaties, I guess, is the other question, kind of that bundles in with that. And no, well, unless a referendum was held that would. Like if we were saying we were holding a referendum to dissolve the reserves and take the land, well, yeah, that would violate treaties, of course. The treaties will remain. The government around it changes, just like the crown is no longer actually King Charles. When crown land is actually government land, it gets transferred, and those obligations for the treaties get transferred along with that. Keith Wilson, who was on there, a lawyer, is explained that fantastically online. But it's a good question, and it's one that's often asked and worth answering.
I just want to add, if there's First Nations people here that would like to talk to me after, we want to involve you. I want to get your perspective. While we're pushing forward a movement in Saskatchewan, it's something we consider involvement in, so feel free to come see me after. In fact, I would really, really appreciate it.
Question? Yeah.
So my question will be open for anyone to answer. I think everybody here knows that the path forward is a referendum of some sort. There's no question there. And the way to get that referendum is to have our government enact legislation that allows it to become binding as opposed to non-binding. We all got that. Nadine's plan, which is to work from within the existing parties in power and take over those seats, is good. But I'm going to ask you, is there an or else? Because if we're not successful at convincing the Sask party and the NDP to get to a binding position like Alberta did, what's our or else? Because we know we have to get there. How do we do it?
I think your or else is, or else you end up in a Canada that doesn't have Alberta as your backstop anymore. Do you want it, like Ezra's, right?
I'll answer. Okay, so if you're thinking of another party, then we need to convince the majority of the population that that party is the answer. With what I've explained tonight, you only need a small percentage. The people in this room can do it.
Could we not do it without any political parties?
No. Because that's a violent option and that's not what we're going to support.
I think Corey has a different viewpoint.
Oh, that's okay.
Maybe he has.
Well, just something a little more on the pragmatic end of it too, though. I mean, to quote the late Ralph Klein, he would always look for the parade and get in front of it. A lot of politicians are natural pragmatists and they want to stay in power. And if they see that the groundswell is there, they see that's where the parade's going, they see that where that's the support is, they're not going to get in your way. They're going to start marching in front of you. But it starts with this room and building that, and you can rest assured they're watching, they're listening. They got good jobs, they want to keep them. So that's one of the ways, I mean, the parties are there, they're part of the system, but at the same time, there's ways and ways to influence them, and if the wave is coming, they'll follow.
Corey, you said you started your journey when you were 19 years old. Looking around the room here, while I appreciate all the silver foxes that have showed up for this meeting, it's really, really important that we come up with a strategy to get the youth involved in this. Quite frankly, I could be dead by the time 4 or 5 years rolls around to see a new Saskatchewan. It's the kids' future. We're all doing this for our kids, for our grandkids, but our kids and our grandkids are not here. They're not involved. And I really think it's important to somehow get a strategy for the kids to get involved. Our government's totally abandoned our kids during COVID, and now they're surprised that the kids are abandoning them. It's not a surprise to me.
I'll give you a quick answer. Maybe the panelists have an answer too. I have kids the age that you're talking about. They don't come to political events in Regina on a Monday night. They're doing kid things. So I would argue that kids are overwhelmingly conservative these days. They're actually more likely to vote conservative than boomers are, the young people. But they don't come to this stuff. It doesn't mean they're not involved. They are just involved in different ways.
We have to go to them. Like in your home, we have to go to them and teach them how they can teach their friends. They're not going to come here. I have a 15-year-old. She told me this week, Mom, I'm never going to have a home, so there's no point in me trying really hard to get a job. I was trying to motivate her to get in the trades or something. I've never seen a 15-year-old with so little hope. So if we're going to reach them, we need to teach, to basically give them hope. And that's going to be every single one of us. It's not going to be a movement. Make it fun, make it cool. There's a young person here because there's one girl that lifted her hand. You should start a TikTok account because all kids are on TikTok. You need to make viral videos that make independence cool. And if you have parents, if you're parents, like get your kids to do that. That's how you're going to reach them. It's not going to be bringing them here.
Okay.
My understanding is that when Montenegro separated from Serbia, they needed 55%. Have any of the people on the panel looked at that, what happened there?
I haven't looked closely at that one. I have looked at the Velvet Revolution in Slovakia and the Czech Republic, which was a peaceful parting of ways that led, that's more contemporary. Likewise, people forget that Sweden and Norway were one country and they split into two through a referendum as well, though I don't remember offhand what the vote numbers were on that. But there are, absolutely, it's going to be important, and Ezra kind of mentioned that too, to look at the other movements and see the precedents and what happened. If we're talking about the questions on 50% plus one, or what a clear majority means, because that is an ambiguous term, I feel we've got to get comfortably past 55 to try and avoid being mired in courts for the rest of our natural lives.
Okay.
It has to be a landslide, or they'll question, Ottawa will come down on it.
I'm going to disagree with that. I don't think it needs to be a landslide at all.
No? Okay.
The moral authority of a majority would be indisputable. In fact, to resist a majority would come across immediately as punitive. And I think that, of course there would be people who said that. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to is the real politic of it. Would another country acknowledge the sovereignty of Alberta? And that may be the long game for Donald Trump. Because if by installing Mark Carney, he sets into motion a domino effect that leads to the exit of Alberta, and if the new Alberta is no longer hamstrung about selling oil to America, maybe that is a plan he didn't even know he had. But if another country were to acknowledge the independence, that would be the end of it. I really think so. And what are they going to do? Send in a military force? They tried to delay Brexit by years and undermine it, but I think that only made people more resolved. I don't know. I like the idea of having the or else. I'm going to use one more personal, romantic metaphor, because I do think it works. Because I think a country is more than just dollars or cents, and that's something that I think Trudeau and Carney don't realize. Canada is more than just a hotel room. We're more than just an address. And they've cheapened the meaning of citizenship by giving it away promiscuously to anyone. And they've worked very hard to destroy our culture and our history, even stripping Sir John A. Macdonald off the $10 bill, stripping images out of the passports. Like they've done everything to, like as Mao Zedong would do, to zero out all our history, to make us forget who we are. So on the one hand, you can't tell young people that Canada is meaningless and genocidal, and then be shocked when they're interested in an indecent proposal from Donald Trump to go join up with them. But I think that I think young people would be more interested than older people for that reason. And I think that, sorry, I forgot where I was going with that first point.
Or else. The or else.
You know what, I was thinking about my romantic analogies. Would you permit me just one more moment on that? Because a romantic union is more than just an economic union. There's history and there's shared values and there's love. And I bet every person in this room here has those romantic views about Canada in some place. And I bet that everyone in this room would be a reluctant independentist, that you would be driven to it by the bad behavior of your mates. I think so. Like, I don't think anyone here hates Canada. I think people here are just tired of getting the raw deal that our partners out east. I think so. I don't hate Canada. I think that when you don't have an or else, it's like being in a relationship and your partner thinks, oh, you got nowhere else to go. No one else is interested in you. But if a stranger catcalls you and says, hey, and shows some interest in you, that changes the power balance, I would think. And if suddenly Alberta and Saskatchewan look desirable, look like they have other options, look like they have other alternatives, then maybe Central Canada would change its approach. Just like a man who takes for granted his woman is sort of stuck, has no other options, suddenly if other men are interested in her, maybe he'll be much better behaved because he realizes they have options. I think that could happen. I think that Alberta and Saskatchewan are so used to playing helpless because we are in a way. But what happens if suddenly we created another alternative in which we had this other pitch, this other proposal? Maybe it would motivate Central Canada to treat us with a little more respect. Hey, what do you think about Alberta independence? What do you think about Alberta trying to get a better deal within Canada? Do you think Alberta should have the right to vote in a referendum to separate, the same way Quebec did? There's a lot of things to talk about. Can Canada be fixed, or has the West tried that, done that, been there, and it's just not working? Well, we're going to talk about all these things in an amazing day-long conference in Red Deer, the heart of Alberta, on Saturday, June 14th. Go to donegetingscrewed.com to get your tickets now. It's going to be a full day. We'll start with a continental breakfast. We'll have panel discussions. We'll have keynote speakers. We'll even have a debate. I think that's going to be the highlight of it. David Legg, former advisor to the Alberta government, is going to make the case for Canada. Keith Wilson, lawyer, freedom activist, he was with the Freedom Convoy. He'll be making the case for independence. We'll have other people in the debates, a media panel, and people of different points of view, including different political parties. There's going to be a bit of a trade show there too. So we'll serve you 2 meals, but more than that, we'll serve you ideas you just can't get anywhere else. But it's coming up quick, and I promise you this event will sell out. There's only room for 1,000 people. And I know that there have been 1,000-person meetings about this subject all over the province. In fact, we had an event in Calgary that sold out in 2 days when we had only 350 seats. So don't be disappointed. Go to donegetingscrewed.com and get your tickets now. I'll be there. Sheila Gunn-Reid will be there. So many interesting people. Our friends in other media companies like Western Standard, Juno News, and Countersignal. It's going to be a great day. That's Saturday, June 14th in Red Deer, Alberta, all day long. Go to donegetingscrewed.com to get your ticket now. Don't wait. I don't want you to be locked out. It's going to be full. See you there. That's donegetingscrewed.com.
My question is, you talk about the treaty people and the land. So the natives just got from the federal government before the election the cows and plows checks of $30,000, $40,000 per person. So if we're to become independent, are they treaty people gonna, where's that money, where would it come from? Would they still be getting another cows and plows check payoffs that they get from the federal government?
Yeah, well, people confuse a lot of what treaty rights are with what's in the Indian Act. The treaties are actually quite simple. If you read them, they're all online. The main part of the treaties are actually determining what the boundaries of the reserve are to be when they signed over and then ceded, which is a lot of the question going on with people. Read the treaty, it's pretty clear they did cede everything else permanently. The owed reparations, or I shouldn't say reparations, but payments through treaties were typically, even with inflation adjustment, we're talking $5 for each headman and a whetstone and a cow and a few other things like that. Hopelessly out of date, obviously. But what we hear about with other settlements or payments or obligations tend to be in the Indian Act, which is a piece of legislation, not a treaty obligation. And it's an awful piece of legislation. It's a racist piece of legislation, and it's way out of date. That said, the indigenous populations are often really, really socially challenged. I don't think we'd want to go independent and then just suddenly cut off lifelines of support. We don't want to cause more social distress than they already have. I think we want to rework the system and make them much more self-sufficient and the great people they can be. But so, I mean, it's kind of a roundabout way of saying, when you're talking about those individual settlements, those are different things, not necessarily to do with a treaty. And we would have to continue with treaty obligations, but as for other obligations, well, those could be, I guess, in the air.
Hi, I'd like to thank you guys for hosting this, and also to Chris and Tamara for making the trip here to support this movement. couple of concerns that I have with this independence movement, and I'm fully in support of having a strong, serious look at it. Where do we get our leadership? I mean, even in Alberta, we've got 3 or 4 different parties moving in different directions, whether it's sovereignty, independence, whether we become the 51st state. I see no problem with Alberta getting a referendum passed, but where I have a concern is once it comes to an actual vote, you're going to see that vote split in a lot of different ways because people are going to want to be sovereign, independent. Others aren't going to want to be the 51st state. So there's got to be a unifying approach to this. My other question that I have is provincially for Saskatchewan. We talk about maybe Premier Mo isn't the guy that we need. Possibly some other party comes in, is going to maybe be more favorable to independence. Now we risk splitting the vote and you have the NDP take over. Can you answer any of those or give some insight into those concerns?
Well, kind of to that first question, that was kind of the point of the Clarity Act. When a vote comes, it's going to have to be simple. It's not about sovereignty association or 51st state or anything else. It's going to be basically in or out. How that's phrased, we still have to be worked on, but that's what that's got to be. We do have to clarify then what most people want to see the day after an independence vote. But those are the visions that'll come the day after an independence vote. The mechanism we have leaves us with sort of that polarized choice when the time comes.
Can I ask you a question of the crowd? Because I think embedded in the question there was who would be a leader. And that's a good point. Like I say, anyone who pops their head up is going to be defamed, denounced, canceled, deplatformed, shamed. Like there's going to be an enormous character assassination of anyone who attempts to lead this movement. They'll be called a traitor, etc. Can I ask this room what they think about Brad Wall as a potential leader for that? Do you think he's interested? I think he's well loved in Alberta. I don't know. I mean, I never lived in Saskatchewan, so I don't know where he stands, if he still has his oar in the water, his paddle in the water and stuff. I don't know if I'm asking 500 people to holler out their answer, but what I got from your applause, it's a positive suggestion.
Can I say a point? When we look at Alberta, when they started their petition, they got, 140,000 signatures within days? We're at 6,000. In order for us or someone to take the lead, the people need to be willing to put their name out there and sign something. And the fact of the matter is, in Saskatchewan, we have to go with where the people are. So I want to say I want a referendum tomorrow, but the fact of the matter is we only have, 4,000 people who signed the petition on our website? We have to be realistic. We don't have what Alberta has. They have a Danielle Smith who's leading the way. If you had someone that said, Nadine, I think he's great, I've been praying for someone to stand up and to lead the way, I just haven't seen it yet. We need a Brad Wall. We need a Ronald Reagan. But I also want to push that back on that a little bit because it's human nature to look to someone to lead us. It's human nature. You guys all want that shining star. But what are you doing? What are you doing in your community to get more signatures than the 4,000? I say 6,000. We have 6,000 who have signed up, more than that actually. We're at 8,000 on our website. Only 4,000 signed the actual petition. How many people have you each individually shared it with? Maybe Brad Wall is not standing up because the numbers just aren't there.
I was thinking that the reason we were having a problem getting signatures, one thing that scares me is what happens if we do leave? And it would be really helpful if there was a place we could go to find the answers, Ezra was talking about what happens to our mortgage, what happens to our police force, what happens to all of this, because we're always getting from the CBC, the news that we're allowed to hear, the fear-mongering about, it's like an abusive relationship where the husband is saying, oh, you can never, get along without me, you'll fail. And we've been in this relationship for me 62 years, and I'm afraid what will happen if I leave. So where can we get some answers of how we do this procedure to replace the CPP, to do this?
I can give a short answer. It's a bit Alberta-centric, but the Alberta Prosperity Project answers actually a very good FAQ in there to cover a lot of those things, and those things parallel a lot of the same questions that'll happen in Saskatchewan. We also have to remember the election and this sort of heating up of an independent sentiment has really only been a month, even if it feels like Carney's been in for years already. And we're building those structures. Nadine's working on it, other groups, and you're right, like we need more. As Ezra was talking about, the Bloc has already done a lot of great work and a PQ, but we do need to flesh it out. We need to give more central resources. All I could say is we've got to keep working on it, and I think it's coming.
If I can add just a little bit to that, I think that a scholar, a well-respected, reputable professor could become the editor of a journal of independence. And it could be a quarterly journal, and he could sort of assign essays to different colleagues. You do a paper on banking, you do a paper, and he could start building up a mini sort of homemade version of what the Parti Québécois did in a massive version. Let me throw one example at you. I saw a tweet a few weeks ago saying, if you vote yes, you can still keep your Canadian passport and money. And I thought, that's not right. The whole point is to start something new. But then I thought, okay, very, very practical. You've got a passport. And then one day Alberta or Saskatchewan votes to not be a province. Your passport doesn't vaporize. You still have it. How do they take it away from you? They're not going to recall your passport. I thought to myself, you're probably still going to have that passport. Absolutely, and there's no legal mechanism I know of to take away someone's passport unless they do something very wrong, or I suppose it expires. So I thought, I just never thought it through. And I don't have all the answers, but I think there would be answers that would be more soothing than, like, it's a great dark forest that we're going to walk through, and there's all sorts of things hidden in there. But if we turn on the lights, it's probably not that scary. And let me just one more second on police. In Alberta, and I know Saskatchewan too, there's contracts with the federal RCMP to do policing. And that would most likely end. Okay, well, those police officers, those police cars, that police station, it's not moving. Why wouldn't they just, call it the Northwest Mounted Police or call it whatever you want? Literally, all that would happen is the big bosses wouldn't be in Ottawa. I mean, the depot, it's right here in Saskatchewan anyways, right? I mean, why would a cop who has a certain beat in rural Saskatchewan for the RCMP, why wouldn't they just continue on with a new badge? And so many things, it would just be, instead of a decider being in Ottawa, the decider would be in Regina or Calgary or whatever. I don't know. I think I like that Quebec slogan, yes, and anything's possible. And, maybe there's a professor like Barry Cooper who would be the editor-in-chief of that. Sorry, I'm talking too much, Sheila.
Oh, it's fine.
Okay, I have one quick comment. Jeffrey Rath said he would rather call it sovereignty than independence. And for me, that hit for me because it's less like cutting with a knife, and sovereignty is more like, yeah, that's what I want. I want to rule over my own life. And I think the word sovereignty would hit better with the youth, too. That's my opinion.
No, that's a good one. I think you're right.
The thing I keep hearing about that is sovereignty is not really defined. It means different things for different people. So we have to define it. If we're going to use that word, we have to define it. And I just want to add a little bit to what you said. A lot of the research on what it would look like has been done in Alberta. It's been put through reports. They put committees together to look at things. There's a lot more data in Alberta than we do in Saskatchewan. Unfortunately, that's something we're really lacking. Now, it's not something we have the funds to do as an organization. I mean, we don't get funds, barely any. Although they think we do, we must be doing a good job if they think we're really well funded. But it's something you can lobby your government in doing, to put a team together to look at what pension would look like if we were to do Saskatchewan pension plan, to look at what hospitals would look like or anything. They could just do the research. Alberta did. They put a lot of money. You talk about it in your book. What was it called, the report that they did?
What was that picture?
Where they basically look at everything financial to make Alberta more dependent. Or maybe it's Mitch that was telling me about it. I'm sorry. We're working with Mitch to get the same data here, but it's going to need to come from the provincial government. Again, that's going to come from you guys influencing the current government into pushing back more.
Great. Well, I think that's all I have in me tonight, and we do need to be out of the room by 9. I want to thank you, Regina, for coming to our event tonight. I want to thank you for your ability to be unafraid to ask these questions, because as Ezra said, they're going to throw hell at you and then some. But what's possible is anything next. I want to wish you guys a safe drive home. Make sure you stop by the merch table and pick up what's left of Corey's books. And thank you so much. Just have a great trip home. Thanks, guys.